for tuning in. It's 10 a.m. Wednesday, April 23rd here in Korea, live from Seoul. I'm Jindo. We're on to our 8th day of search and rescue operations into the sunken Seoul ferry, but so far there has been no news of any survivors, and the death toll has fastly risen to 139. So this puts the number of the missing at 163 and the number of survivors still at 174. Let's go straight to our Hwang Ji-hye at Pyeongmokhang Harbor, the nearest port from the accident site. Ji-hye, what's the latest?
Jinju, a week has passed since the Seoul ferry capsized, and still we have not found a single survivor. But the death toll is rising by the hour. Now, most of the bodies have been confirmed, and many of them are high school students from the Tanwon High School. But still, some 163 people remain missing inside that sunken ferry, and many of them, nearly 90% of them, are believed to be high school students. Family members of the missing have been camping out here at the Pyeongmokhang Harbor since the day of the capsizing, and they are growing restless, seeing boat after boat arrive with just bodies, not any survivors. But even in the early hours of the morning, I saw many of them sitting by the shore, staring blankly into the water. Jinju?
All right, but the search operations are continuing this morning. Do we see any progress?
Well, the rescue team did succeed in entering the vessel's cafeteria yesterday afternoon, more than a day after they found a route into the cafeteria. They say this is where many of the passengers were believed to be at the time of the accident, because it was breakfast time when the boat started to list. Now, the rescue team will continue focusing their search on the 3rd and 4th floors of the vessel. The 4th floor is where the cabins are, and this is another key area that authorities expect passengers to have been when the ship capsized. More than 200 rescue boats, 34 aircraft, and some 550 rescue personnel will be taking part in today's rescue operations. This has been Hwang Ji-hye reporting from Pyeongmokhang Harbor.
With the remotely operated underwater vehicles, or ROVs, currently in operation at the site, not able to yield much progress due to strong tidal currents, a domestically made robot that can crawl on the bottom of the seafloor is set to be deployed. Hopefully, this robot could give rescue teams a better view of what's going on down below. Sun Jung-in reports.
This is a remote control robot crabster that can crawl along the bottom of seafloor. This 2.4-meter long, 2-meter high machine weighs 650 kilograms and moves using 6 legs. In the ocean, its weight reduces to 150 kilograms due to buoyancy, enabling it to explore the water with a maximum speed of 0.1 meter per second. Crabster is installed with a high-resolution scanning sonar, which helps it recognize objects that are within 100-meter distance. It can shoot and record its surrounding using an ultrasonic camera as well as 10 optical cameras, and can also collect samples using its long arms. Developed by the Korea Institute of Ocean Science and Technology in 2010, the robot will take part in the ongoing search operation at the Seoul ferry disaster site. Crabster was made to be able to resist water currents that run up to 3.7 kilometers per hour.
Using scanning sonar, we can expect to receive more information on how the sunken ferry is capsized, so that we can figure out the best way to rescue and salvage the vessel.
Unmanned submersible robots, or ROVs, from Korea and the U.S. were dispatched to the accident site, but have so far failed to gather any substantial results as they were affected by the currents. Unlike ROVs, experts hope this crab-like robot, which is able to withstand powerful currents, can help inspect the site and play an active role in the search operation. Sun Jung-in, Arirang News.
It's been a devastating and torturous week for the families of the missing, with nothing they could do but just wait for any news of their sons and daughters who were on board the ill-fated ferry. They're growing increasingly angry as details continue to emerge about the sinking and the failing rescue operation. The families have been staying at a gymnasium near the accident site in Jindo, where our Hwang Ji-hye joins us live. Ji-hye, how are the families doing?
Jindo, the atmosphere here is growing very tense as divers continue to pull out bodies just now, and families here are now near complete exhaustion, both physically and mentally. As more days pass, the families here is getting harder for families to cope with passing hours, not knowing what news they will hear, if any, about their missing children. The frustration has once boiled over, with the families saying descriptions of the newly discovered bodies were not detailed enough, slowing the procedure of identifying the bodies. A Coast Guard official promised the families at the podium this morning that authorities will do their best to give precise information. He went on to explain the characteristics of the unidentified, and the whole gymnasium fell silent, with families desperately staring at the television screen showing the list of descriptions. There are still 9 bodies that have not been sent back home. Jinju?
Now, Ji-hye, they're trying to offer them some sort of comfort and support. Volunteers from across the nation are gathering to this auditorium. Tell us more about them.
Yes, Jinju, while the whole country is hopefully waiting for news of more survivors, hundreds of volunteers, workers are gathering here at the Jindo Gymnasium to support the families desperately waiting for their missing ones and encourage them to stay strong.
I'm also a parent. I don't know how much these supplies can heal the sorrow of the families, but since they're sent from across the nation, I'm working day and night to distribute them to the families, hoping that they will provide comfort for them, at least a little.
I came here today to support the families here, and because there were already so many volunteer workers, I feel bad that I can't help them more.
There are now fewer and fewer relatives of the victims staying at the gymnasium now, as more bodies are being discovered and identified. The families are leaving to tend to their loved ones. The families that are still here, however, are clinging on to hope that survivors will be found. There are notes at the entrance of the gymnasium, and one of them reads, "Come back soon, honey, so we can have dinner together." Families of the missing have not given up. This has been Hwang Ji-hye reporting live from the Jindo Gymnasium.
And as more and more bodies are brought to the surface at the accident site, a temporary group memorial altar has been set up in the city of Ansan to pay respect to victims from Tanwon High School. We have our Connie Kim joining us live from the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, where the altar has been set up. Connie, we hear that the altar has opened about an hour ago. Give us the details.
Right, Jinju. I'm currently standing by at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, which is about 5 minutes from Tanwon High School. Now, as you can see behind me, continuous streams of people and families are coming here to pay their last respects, and I can spot many of them breaking out into tears. Now, a task force of the Gyeonggi Education Province has set up this temporary altar for the deceased ones, as it was difficult for them to set up a group funeral. Now, on this day, citizens of Ansan and volunteers have gathered together to lend a helping hand.
We think people from all over the world will come here today. About 100 volunteers are here to support the families of the victims. We are going to distribute food, drinks, and assist mourners.
As the families of the victims wish to hold a memorial altar for all of those who have passed, it will be set up at the Arirang Recreation Park next week. Meanwhile, 25 of the deceased is scheduled to be released to their families this morning from hospitals and funeral halls in the city.
Right, and for the survivors, we hear that some of the students who have been treated at hospitals have been or will shortly be discharged.
Right, about 80 to 90% of the survivors that were receiving medical treatment at Korea University Ansan Hospital will be discharged today, depending on their mental and physical stability. Now, this according to the director of the hospital, who said that students being hospitalized for too long will be actually a stress factor for them and prevent them from recovering. Now, they will continue to get counseling and medication if needed. The Hanwon High School, which was temporarily closed, will reopen Thursday for students that were not on board the Seoul ferry, while survivors still receiving medical treatment may take classes and counseling in the hospital. This has been Connie Kim reporting live from Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall.
1 week has passed since the ferry sinking and no additional survivors have turned up, only bodies. The public is nonetheless showing its support, keeping hope alive, and a yellow ribbon movement in the online community is symbolizing that hope and sending out a message: we're still here waiting. Paul Yi has more.
This simple image of a yellow ribbon bow has become a symbol of hope in the wake of one of Korea's deadliest maritime disasters. Its message of one small movement that can lead to big miracles has resonated with people across the nation. The Yellow Ribbon Campaign of Hope was first started by a university student club, urging people to unite in their support for those affected by the tragic accident.
It began as a logo being distributed as a KakaoTalk wallpaper, but it spread to other aspects of everyday life that we can see, like tying a yellow ribbon or string on your backpack. Keeping them in your thoughts is also good.
The Yellow Ribbon Campaign has spread online across social networking services such as KakaoTalk, Twitter, and Facebook, with international celebrities and professional athletes also joining in to express their support for the victims. Meanwhile, the story of Park Ji-young, a 22-year-old crew member, has deeply moved the country. According to survivors, Park had refused to take a life jacket and instead kept trying to save passengers till the very end. Her body was one of the first to be recovered from the wrecked ship. An online petition has now attracted tens of thousands of signatures, calling for the government to designate her as a martyr. Once legally recognized for her sacrifice, Park's family will receive financial compensation and benefits, while her body may be buried in the National Cemetery.
Certificates issued by hospital-level medical institutions or police records to prove our actions are most important. In addition, identification documents from fire departments and other authorities are also required.
The Health Ministry says once it receives a formal application for Park, officials will promptly examine her case for review. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Investigators continue to try to isolate what caused the ship carrying hundreds of passengers to tip over. For more on the ongoing investigation, we'll connect live to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center. Eunice, more detention warrants were issued late yesterday.
That's right, Jinju, and we haven't seen the end of it yet either, as the courts will consider the cases of 2 crew members arrested yesterday, including that of a man surnamed Son, who unsuccessfully tried to take his life on Monday. Now, yesterday, Hwang Ji District Police, or rather court, approved detention warrants for 4 additional crew members on flight risk concerns, bringing the number of those detained to 7, including the captain. The 4 made their case to the public, telling awaiting reporters the captain did issue an evacuation order. That's, of course, contrary to wide speculation. Other claims are being debunked this morning. The detained crew said they tried to release the 46 lifeboats on board, but failed to reach them because the ship was tilted 90 degrees. But a screenshot of their escape showed the ship was in fact tilted closer to 45 degrees, and the lifeboats on board, which were said to be defective, inflated without issue when they reached the water. The crew left the ship at around 9:40 a.m., at least that's what's estimated. That's about 10 minutes after the passengers were last told to stay put with their life vests on by the crew. Investigators are considering charging some of them with homicide.
Now, Eunice, those lifeboats could have saved more than 1,000 people if they had been deployed, since they hold 25 people each. Now, there were more travel bans issued on personnel of the ferry company. Tell us more about that.
Right. The Special Investigation Team imposed travel bans on 30 more personnel related to the Cheonghae-jin Marine Company, in addition to the 44 already issued. Investigators really zoning in on how the ferry company managed their ships, and particularly this ship. Inspection data released by an opposition lawmaker yesterday showed that this Haewol-ho ferry was overloaded with 3 times more cargo than was allowed by the Korean Register of Shipping after its renovation, which likely caused the ship to lose its balance after that initial sharp turn, which likely at this point triggered the series of events that led to the eventual capsize. And relatedly, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries is looking into revoking the Cheonghae-jin Marine Company's business license as a result of this accident.
And add to that the fact that the ferry was running behind schedule and an inexperienced helmsman at the wheel. It seems like a recipe for a perfect storm. Thank you, Eunice. Now, well, another thing adding to this recipe is the onboard announcement that was made when the Haewol-ho ferry first ran into trouble. Most of its passengers followed the instructions given to them by the ship's crew that is stay put inside the ship. This has confounded 4 maritime experts who say that decision and the indecisiveness on the part of the captain and crew likely doomed hundreds on board. Our UDN has the details.
Maritime experts described the announcements on the Haewol-ho ferry instructing people to stay in their rooms at the time of the accident as totally incomprehensible.
In 99.9% cases, the crew is on top of it. They are well trained and they are able to evacuate the ship in plenty of time.
The retired Commodore says it is unacceptable that the captain completely failed in his duties to take control during the crucial moments after the accident.
Key decisions should be made within the captain's mind within 5 to 10 minutes. As soon as he gets a report from all departments of the ship and assesses how much damage is done to the vessel itself.
Logs show that the captain of the Haewol-ho ferry, Lee Jun-seok, delayed evacuation for at least 30 minutes after the ship began to capsize. Others say the announcement telling people to stay where they were actually made the situation worse. Mario Vittone, a former U.S. Coast Guard maritime accident investigator, says if those announcements were not made, the passengers would have gone to the deck to see what was going on. Thad Allen, the former head of the U.S. Coast Guard, also says common sense dictates that when a situation is deteriorating, the crew needs to give up on trying to save the ship and pour efforts into saving the passengers. UDN, Arirang News.
Now, this just in, the official death toll of the ferry sinking has now risen to 140, and with that number rising fast, we're expecting more bodies to be retrieved from the accident site. And moving on, this Haewol-ho ferry disaster has raised serious questions about safety awareness here in Korea. Authorities have vowed to punish those responsible for the accident to the full extent of the law. However, records show that in Korea, those who violate maritime regulations are often barely punished at all and are free to remain at the helm. Connie Lee has more.
Coast Guard officials flip over a boat after knocking on it in search of survivors. 7 crew members were found dead in this hit-and-run accident. This happened last year in March in the same waters where the Haewol-ho ferry incident took place. And just about 2 weeks ago, authorities caught 6 crew members under the influence of alcohol, steering a boat in the waters around Korea. But even out of the sea waters, more trouble. Last month, authorities found 17 sailors steering ships with illegal licenses. In the past 5 years alone, here in Korea, about 600 people were found dead or missing from maritime accidents, most of them caused by human error. From 2009 to 2013, there were about 1,400 accidents at sea. And out of those, 82% were caused by the crew. Safety violations and negligence were the cause for most of the accidents. Regardless, in those cases, the penalties for the crew would be considered light by most. Most of them were let off with just a warning, while others were suspended from work. Not a single one of the crew members had their licenses revoked. Year after year, light punishments for the many accidents in Korean waters. And now, with Korea's biggest maritime accident in decades at the fore, questions are being raised about whether it's finally time to take sea safety more seriously. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And moving on to some other news, with President Obama arriving in Seoul this Friday, there had been speculation North Korea was preparing for a fourth nuclear test. However, the U.S.-based North Korea analysis site 38 North says that based on satellite imagery of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site, a nuke test is unlikely during Obama's visit to Asia. The website goes on to say that recent operations at Punggye-ri have not reached the high level of intensity in terms of vehicle, personnel, and equipment movement that occurred in the weeks prior to past detonations. It also says other possible indicators present before the North Korean nuclear tests in 2009 and 2013, such as communications vans and a satellite dish intended to transmit pre-test data, have not been spotted. Experts speculated recently that a fourth nuclear test could be in the works ahead of Obama's visit to Tokyo and Seoul this week. Now, President Obama will land on Tokyo this Wednesday, and on the eve of his arrival there, a group of nearly 150 Japanese lawmakers paid their respects at the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine, where convicted war criminals are laid. The visit by a group of legislators from several parties and at least one cabinet minister to mark an annual spring festival drew strong rebuke from Korea, a country forced under Japanese colonial rule in the early 20th century. Korean Foreign Ministry spokesperson Cho Tae-young described the visit as a deplorable and an act that undermines stability in the region. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said earlier that the visits were an individual matter of personal religious freedom and not something the government should interfere with.
I'm Hwang Ji-hye here to give you a weather update in Jindo and around the country. As of about an hour ago, the waves have been remaining calm at 0.6 meter. Winds have died down, blowing at 1.7 meters per second, and water temperature is at about 11.6 degrees Celsius. And as far as the tides go, this is when the weakest tidal currents occur today. We have two more opportunities coming up. Next is at 3:30 p.m. and at 8:35 later in the day. And flow velocity should decrease 1 hour before and 1 after these indicated times. But in fact, the speed of tidal currents went down to their slowest since neap tides started from yesterday, which should last till tomorrow, Thursday, and search operations have been speeding up in time time with the neap tide. And it looks like rest of the country will continue to have early summer-like conditions. Highs in Seoul will rise to 24 degrees Celsius under lots of sunshine. And over in Jindo can also expect to have moderate conditions with sunny skies. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after noon.
Well, that's about it for now. Join us for more updates on the developments of the ferry sinking in about half an hour at 11 a.m. Korea time. Thank you for watching.